thank Liam and Pat for being here today too. And I think all of us have learned the lesson that, you know, I think that the generosity of the Irish people and the communities really, absolutely, you know, the Irish really do, you know, they never stop. They just keep giving. And it has been hard because, you know, I suppose I asked the Minister there a minute ago because it was an issue that I had seen where, you know, when Ukrainians come into the country and they're at the airport, the Minister said, I said, do you have a, you know, a list of where, you know, where the, you know, they might go or what county? He said, no. He said, it just happens that wherever there's a vacancy, we have to put them on the bus and send them. And I suppose even that in itself would be, like, as the Minister said, it's probably not as suitable as it should be, even though, look, you know, we have to make sure that they have accommodation and they're in proper, you know, facilities. But I just think that's something that needs to be addressed. The other area I want to ask you about is, and I think it's so important, we would have seen, I suppose we actually seen it through COVID. When you seen the HSE, you would have seen the local authorities, you would have seen SIDECAP, you would have seen the Carlow County Development Partnership and all the different groups that came together, like the Gardaí and the Mall. How do you feel that has impacted on you with your own work? Because I can only just compliment you on the work that you have done. Look, this hasn't been easy. This has nearly been a tsunami for you in the sense of, you know, I mean, you have never, I'd say, dealt with so many people, and I think well done. And I think it's important that we compliment the volunteers and on Post for their work, and just even, I think the way, like, again, everyone came together. But I just think because, again, you're dealing with, like, you depend on the local authorities, you depend on all the different agencies to work. How do you find, and I know Pat had said this about a template, that he feels that there is a template there. How do you feel that will impact? The language barrier is another issue I see. And when we spoke about housing today, we spoke about, you know, which is great. And I know Kathleen brought up with the Minister today, I think the government have decided, well, the ministers have decided the €400 payment for people that would be in a position to take in families or whatever. So, like, and that's welcome. How do you think that will benefit? We'd say, how do you think that will be? Will it be an incentive? And because there has been so much goodwill, but also the Minister had said that, you know, you can have from 1 person to 2 persons to 3 people, or maybe, you know, 2 or 3 adults and 2 or 3 children. How do you feel that will work? But also, you know, when it comes to accommodation, and I see it myself because I'm kind of like working with some community groups in my own area of Carlow and County Carlow. And, you know, even though you see all the good, you know, I mean, there's people buying more, there's so much food out there, and there's so much, whether it's clothes or whatever, setting up shops and, you know, but I'm just wondering, how do you feel long-term this will work? What's your long-term vision of this now for someone that has been in it so long? And secondly, and I'll just ask Pat this one, like, you take Kilkenny, they have a Red Cross in Kilkenny, and you look at Carlow and other areas like my own that don't have one. Yeah. Do you see in the future that we need to set up Red Crosses in other areas? And what do you see would be the best practice there? Because I think it is valuable. And again, I can only say, I think things have happened so quick, but I do think there is issues there that we still need to look at, and there is concerns. And, you know, when you spoke about even, and I just kind of wanted to pick up on this, there's 35% with the department. Maybe you might just explain that to me and how that works, because this is total pledges. You might just come back to me. And are you concerned that the withdrawals are 22%? Like, because I think, I sometimes think while everybody's doing so much good work, sometimes I think there's a little bit of confusion in communities. And I just think maybe that's something that we need to maybe look at. I think what people are asking is, like, will it be months? Will it be whatever? No one can tell that. And I suppose that's something we need to address. But look, overall, I just think once we communicate with the public and the communities and the work that they've done, like yourselves and all the other agencies, that, look, we have really, really played our part. And again, well done. So I hope you got some questions out of that. Because there was about 10 in it altogether.
Yes, that's right. Well, I'll deal with the last one first, right, because that's the easiest one to deal with.
Thank you.
That is in terms of the pledges, the 35%, that represents just over 3,000 vacant pledges. Vacant ones. Sorry, yeah. And then it's more than 6,000 actually shared pledges. So I think the figure is in the vicinity of just over 9,000 homes that are available in one shape or form. But the vacant are available now and are accessible now. So that's where the immediate success will come. The shared, while you can put adults into shared accommodation at this stage, the Garda vetting and look, it has to happen, but it does slow the pace down, because that's going to take time, and it's very difficult to actually ascertain precisely when that's going to come to fruition. The withdrawals, though, it's normal, because I think what happens is that people immediately respond. The generosity of Irish people is extraordinary that way. Immediately respond, and then people will tell you themselves. They say, look, my circumstances have changed, or I hadn't discussed it with the family, or some people thought about the 6 months, because we look for a minimum of 6 months. And people said 6 months, particularly for shared accommodation, no, we're taking a step back. And it's better in a way that people take a step back then, rather than have somebody in the house and then have to say, well, listen, it's time to move that, this isn't working. So, because it does take some thinking through, having someone in the house, maybe 2 or 3 people in the house for that period of time. The community fora, to me, were one of the great things that came out of COVID. God help us. I know it's an awful thing to say, but what it did was it brought a lot of communities together and different players within the community. And I think the local authorities, it gave them a different focus, which is a focus that I hadn't seen with local authorities before, but it worked extremely well. And we can see that at the moment in relation to the Ukraine people coming, that they're in fact benefiting from that, because the various organisations are working together locally. And I mean, there are some wonderful examples. There's one in Templemore. There's a convent there, and the community are getting involved in it. The Red Cross are involved in it, the local authority. I think there's 30 or 40 refugees moved in, certainly moving in this week. The same up the road in Feathered, there are 60 people, and the schools have taken the children in. The local employer, Coolmore, has taken people in. Local business people have funded it, and then the department are in there funding. So you have a community involved in each of those cases, and really that's the way to go.
Thank you. The language, the language, and just how do you find, is there a concern speaking to people about the language barrier?
I haven't met it yet, but I know. And look, in saying that, I'm not close enough, ironically, to it, because I'm sitting in an office. And yes, I interviewed a lady for a position, a Ukraine lady today. I interviewed a Ukraine lady yesterday, because we want to bring the Ukrainian people into our office to do this work with us. They all speak extremely good English, and I know the project that we're jointly running in Vicar Street, that will be part of it. There will be English classes there, and there will be Ukrainians working there as well.
Jared, my own background is in teaching, so I'd be reasonably familiar with, I suppose, the flow of refugees who are coming. The first surge would have been very strong capacity, well able to look after themselves. But more recently, they're coming in, and their language skills are limited enough. But from what I'm hearing, the Department of Education and Skills, and indeed the Further Education Department, have moved mountains in order to ensure that resources are being made available to schools to ensure that there isn't too much of a divide. And interestingly, I was chairing a meeting of another organisation earlier this afternoon, an Irish language organisation, and I noticed that there is Gaeilge Gudi Ukrainish and Ukrainish Gudi Gaeilge projects going on around the country at the moment, and they're online and so on. They're doing extremely well. What are the lessons that the Red Cross is to learn? We're always trying to recruit. Carlow Kilkenny is something very close to some of our hearts in relation to the strength of the organisation. And so one of the key objectives of what we'd be doing as an organisation is to try and make sure that we have potential recruits who will join and stay on. A lot of people during COVID, they became part of community support networks and so on, and they're key to a lot of what's happening in local communities. The trick for all voluntary organisations is you get recruits, then you try and hold on to them, and you've got to have a programme which is attractive. But that's part of what we do. I think as a people, I think we've learned a lot from the Hungarian refugees came here, the Vietnamese boat people, the Bosnians. There's a lot of learning has happened, and I think a skill set has been built up that we didn't realise that maybe was as deep rooted as it is, and I think that will happen again. But I think we shouldn't take our eye off the ball. I think that the dynamic of every county is different. A lot depends. Do you know what? Public representatives, you should give yourselves a pat on the back. When this started, the first people who got on to us were TDs, senators, councillors, because they had already identified vacant houses and so on around about the place. I mean, I remember when the Count Corla hosted coffee morning across the way. I met members from all parties. By the way, we have 6 houses and we've fixed up 6 families. And they did it along the informal route. And now, I suppose that has to be supported with whatever supports are necessary for that to work. There is a role for a loose enough structure, but when you're dealing with vulnerable people and children, there needs to be certainty and a structure all of the time. And that's, I mean, I'd be encouraging the government to continue to build supports which will outlast this. I think it'll be around for a lot longer than some people think.
I think so too, yeah. Well, again, I just want to thank you again. You absolutely have to do marvellous work, and I can only not but give you enough praise for the time and what you have done. And I'm sure, you know, the Ukrainian people, like, I mean, they have said it themselves, the Irish people have made them so welcome, and you have played a huge role in that, so well done to both of you. Well done, and your teams.